We'll play more than one person if we need to, But I've been really impressed with Tristan Lee. Really impressed with our other guys who've been battling. They've had really good summers. So it's fun to go away for 3 weeks in the summer, vacation, and come back and see where the guys are. And so I think we're in a really good place, at that position, and expect a lot of competition all summer. And going into the first game.
Can I be a friend really quick and ask you to scoot forward?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yep.
When you say the other guys are primarily referred to Sadler.
Yeah, Colin's had a tremendous summer. So, I think Tristan and Colin, it's great to go out watch those guys work. And Blake, all three of those guys are really push each other. So, Colin and Tristan, I think Tristan did some really good things this spring and kind of pulled away a little bit, but Colin's had a tremendous summer. So, I told him my expectation is to play him, whoever starts first, is going to run out there. You can only run out one guy, but I anticipate playing both those guys early and often.
I guess Blake just sort of dabbled on the left side of the spring.
We cross-train a little bit. Yeah, he feels comfortable at the right tackle spot. Some of the stuff we do highlights his athleticism on the right side. Some of the stuff we do schematically benefits us to have Blake there. But he's cross-trained this summer. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
What's it been like to rediscover this offense's identity with a new OC as well as encompassing some fresh faces in your line as well?
That's a good question. Well, the guys are having fun. And you hear that all summer. They're, in the summer we get the least amount of time with the players, and so it's player-led. And to hear the feedback from them, creating big plays down the field against our defense, which is really good defense. Now it's different on the line of scrimmage because you don't have pads on, so the pass rush isn't what it will be, in August. But that's been fun. And then all of our mid-years, our young guys, to have a whole spring in the system, and then the way we've restructured some things this summer, I think there's a lot of confidence and continuity by those guys up front.
Was it tough? What was the reaction, the mentality coming off of that Orange Bowl game? Do you watch? How much did you guys watch that film, and how much of it did you put behind you and recognize that it's time to?
Yeah, sure. You always watch a game, and the good, the bad, the ugly, and how can we improve from this? What do we need to work on in the off season? But then you flush it and you move on pretty quickly, especially when there's a new coordinator, because it's a different offense. So we haven't really we haven't talked about that game really since it happened, probably.
Do you think this offense needed a reset? Because it seemed like there was a lot of frustration at times last year. Do you think that you're going to see things a lot different?
I think it'll be different. It'll certainly be different. I think we're excited about Coach Riley and what he brings to the offense. He's a great offensive mind, and like I said, I think the players are excited about it. And so I think that's some of the things you'll see will be similar. Inside zone is inside zone. How we package it and formation it, and some of those some techniques are going to be subtly different. But for most people, they won't be able to tell the difference. But we're excited about the change and this summer and what the guys have done, and going into the fall, we're excited about that.
You kind of touched on Colin Larry. Talk about Colin Sadler a little bit.
Yeah.
His development.
Yeah.
And what's realistic coming into this year for?
Yeah. Well, I think what most people don't realize is Colin was a highly recruited prospect coming in, 45 minutes down the road, and got here. And you go from being the guy to not playing much. We played him in the first 3 games, and our hope was to bring him along and play him a lot last year. And then, we were in some really tight games early on, and kind of realized, I don't know if he's gonna. Is it worth playing him 100 or 150 snaps and burning his redshirt year, or kind of continue to bring him along? He stayed in all of our meetings. He traveled with us, and we were able to hold his redshirt. And so. That's a benefit. So Colin has had a tremendous offseason. He's got a great look in his eye. Like I said, been gone for 3 weeks, came back in last Friday, kind of see their Friday, early morning workout, and to see those guys work has been really encouraging. And the DEXA scan, their body composition numbers and weight room numbers and all that stuff validates what you see. So couldn't be more excited about Colin, where he is developmentally.
I want to take it back to Riley as a staff. What's it like? What's that room like? What's he like as a leader for all of you guys coming into a group that's been together?
Yeah, well, that's not an easy thing to do, to come in as the new guy. It's one thing for a whole new staff to come together. It's another thing for staff who's been there for a while, knows each other, played with each other, to come in and be the new guy. And so I think he's managed that extremely well. He's a very humble guy. He's only 33, so I'm older than he is, which is kind of crazy. But he's very humble, and yet he's very confident in his system and his ability as a coordinator. And I think that's a really good balance. And I think he's done a really good job developing the staff. We had a lot of meetings in some ways, because we're kind of rebooting the offense, we didn't do as much of the self-scout stuff as you typically do, and so we just jumped straight into the football side of it with him. So, and then we've continued to get feedback from the guys and add little wrinkles throughout the summer. So the other thing about his offense is the simplicity of it allows you to get a lot of reps. We've got a lot of reps. We've built a really good library of plays from the spring that our guys can learn from, we can teach off of. So I think he's done a really good job managing, the staff and being who he is and being confident who he is, but also the humility that he brings and the confidence that he brings that guys feed off of.
You mentioned the fun the guys have been having. Is there a sense of renewed fun for you? I don't know how much fun coaches get to have, really, but is there a renewed sense of fun for you guys?
Winning is fun. Scoring touchdowns is fun. And I love running the football, but I also love 60-yard touchdown passes. Those are fun. So it's fun to see. We've got a tremendous amount of committed players in our locker room, battle-tested guys. You talk about Walker, you talk about Putnam. Some of those guys have played a lot of football. They came to Clemson to win championships. They didn't come to go 10-3. So we know the expectation when we embrace that. So it's fun to see those guys feeling confident in the system, and the expectation is that it'll show up on the field, this fall.
With Marcus Tate, how much do you anticipate playing him at tackle during fall camp?
Sure, yeah, that's always an option. Marcus is a gifted athlete, and he can cross-train. Our goal, especially this year, kind of having a year under our belt with this group of guys, I think we can cross-train a little bit more when necessary. But we cross-train every day in individual. We can cross-train in one-on-ones. We can cross-train in some inside periods. I think, you also got to build that chemistry with your five guys or your next five. And so there's a balancing act of making sure those guys get enough reps together beside each other, because Marcus hasn't played, missed all spring. And so we got to get him back and feeling confident. He looks great. He's as lean as he's ever been. He's moving really well. But, yeah, he definitely gives you flexibility. So if our starting five, we did last year, if we get a couple days into camp and we realize that Blake Miller's one of our best five and we move Walker, we can do that. If we need to move Marcus to left tackle and put another guy in their guard, we can certainly do that as well.
Is one more difficult than the other, shifting out from guard to tackle or tackle?
I think it's a preference thing. For me, if I was a guard, I wasn't athletic enough to play tackle, it would have been very difficult. But for Marcus, like I said, he's a very gifted athlete, so that the passing game stuff, traditionally the run game stuff is a little bit less complicated tackle. A lot more base blocks than there are combinations with the center, but from a pass protection standpoint, you got to feel comfortable there. And he's always been a very good pass blocking offensive lineman, so that makes it easier for him. Some guys who've only played tackle, it would be more difficult to bump into guard. They just haven't done that.
As far as like a timeline, you mentioned during camp last year, it was obvious early what y'all needed to do. Is there a point where you would like to have it settled so you can develop the continuity of that starting five?
Sure. Yeah, I think after that first major scrimmage, I think you have a good idea coming out of spring, kind of where you are. And like I said, Walker and Marcus missed the spring. John Williams missed the spring. Mitchell Mays missed a lot of spring. So you have guys that have played a lot of football, and then you can always, it takes you a couple days because you got acclimatization. So it's about a week into camp, I think, when you can kind of see everything you've heard from the weight room staff has really showed up. And so from the last time we put pads on in April till August, guys take a big jump. And so you can see guys moving around, but until you put pads on. So yeah, I think to answer your question, Larry, I think really after that first scrimmage game, first scrimmage, you kind of start kind of narrowing in on, who your best 5 are, who your next 5 are. You got to continue to cross-train because inevitably injuries are going to happen. But then, and then once you start getting really, especially into your kind of game prep stuff, I think the beginning of class is kind of the official end of camp, and we still have a couple weeks before we play. So there can continue to be some shuffling at that point. But
would you say that exiting spring, Tristan had maybe a slight advantage there?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I mean, nothing Colin didn't do well. Just Tristan had a really good spring, and those guys both have different skill sets and bring different things to the table. They're different players, and so I think both of those guys will play some right tackle as well. Colin can also bump in and play some guard, so that gives us some flexibility.
What was it like when you learned that Brandon wasn't going to be here? He's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
He's a Clemson guy.
Yeah.
So much about the family atmosphere. But at the same time, it's also about winning games.
Sure.
The Clemson guys.
Yeah.
To see that.
Sure. Well, the week before we were at Coach Streeter's house watching, Trevor Lawrence in the playoff game, and my son's playing pool with Coach Streeter's son. So, that's the reality of the business we're in. Is it's a performance-based business, and at the end of the day, Coach Sweeney's going to do what he thinks gives Clemson the best chance to be successful. And the same way as a position coach, I love, all 15 scholarship guys and the 7 walk-ons we have. I love all those guys, but you can only put 5 out there, right? I've got to put the best guy on the field. It's the same in recruiting. You got to recruit the guys that fit Clemson, and so that's just the nature of the business. And so Coach Streeter's a phenomenal person. Ashley's great, and he's in a good situation in Georgia, and he'll have a job next year wherever he wants, and we wish him nothing but the best. But we are excited about Coach Riley and what he brings, and we're excited about what that means for our team.
I guess go
ahead, John.
Yeah, with Will Putnam, obviously, the talk is always moving to center, getting the snap right. But now that he's figured that part out, how much is he figuring out now how to operate more in that bumper, get the actual techniques of playing center, lining guys up right?
Yeah, well, he's a different player this time than he was last year, a year ago. It's amazing the difference a year makes, and so the game is slowed down for him. He's not thinking about snapping. He's had so many snaps, that's not a problem. Where Putnam's really challenged himself is taking his game to the next level in regards to defensive identification, recognition, making the calls and the points, being that point man, and then challenging himself to learn the big pictures of the offense. And so some of the differences in this offense is he's going to have a little bit more control over some of that stuff, which is going to be exciting. So he feels really good. He looks fantastic. He ran like a 5K like last week with Coach Hogan. He ran like 10-minute miles, which the 3:15 is pretty impressive, So he's a grinder. He's a grinder. We're glad to have him.
How much better do you feel about the offensive line just from a leadership and maturity standpoint now having a Will and a Walker and Marcus as a junior?
Yeah, I think Coach Batson said it best. We have layers of leadership. It's one thing to have 1 or 2 guys that are leaders, but we have a lot of, Blake's a leader, Tristan's a leader, Colin's a leader, Trent Howard's a leader. We have a lot of guys on the offensive line who have been around 3-4 years that provide leadership in different ways, and so the best teams I've ever been a part of have layers of leadership at every position. I think that's something that we have right now.
How much more running is there getting out the offensive lineman in this scheme, some of the perimeter stuff, the screen game? Is it significantly more than in the past?
I wouldn't say necessarily that there's the plays are significant. No, I would say we probably put fewer screens in this year and this spring. I'm sorry, and we rep those a lot more. So some of the same screens you're going to see show up more, hopefully. And so that's and then there's some screens you like against man coverage or cover 4, 3, whatever, and so some of those are game plan deals. But we feel good about the athleticism of our tackles in space. So any way we can utilize that, we will.
It feels like you sort of touched on this earlier. Garrett really believes in reps.
Yes.
Just getting that confidence and cohesion, just in doing things over and over and over again.
Right.
Can you maybe elaborate on some of your insight into that?
Sure. Yeah. the other part of that is if you're just going against a defense that presents the same look every play, and you get 10 reps against that, great. You got 10 reps against that specific defense. But we're also going against a defense that is very multiple in what they do, front-wise, blitz-wise. And so the more reps you can get, the higher chance you're going to run that same play into a lot of different looks, which helps you in the fall. The guys become so as coaches and players, it allows you to see what the strengths are of those plays and where are the areas of concern. And every pass protection has a strength and a weakness, right? 5-man protection, you can only block 5 guys. They bring 6. You got to get the ball out quick. 6-man protection is great, but you're also not getting your back out. So there's give and take. So I think the more reps you can get at the same play, just the more confident guys get, and that's one of the reasons why his offense has been successful is the repetition.
Has the tempo part of his offense then led to creating any differences in the training for the offensive line?
I wouldn't say necessarily no. I think to me when it comes to tempo now, it's being able to manipulate the tempo to your advantage. I think not many teams run the true like we're just going to call it as fast as we can. So we have the ability to play fast. We've always had the ability to play fast. It was a big point of emphasis last year. And so I think our guys have trained in a similar way in regards to that. But and then I think we've one of the things Coach Riley's brought is we've added some additional tempo periods into practice, which has been helpful. Because you can preach tempo all the time, but if you don't have periods of practice, if every period against the defense is team pass and you're slowing it down, you're not working your tempo, right? So you got to create situations in practice where you get to do that.
Coach, we talked to Wes Goodwin about how he's grown in just 1 year under his belt in that position. In what ways do you think you've grown from last year?
Good question. I think my relationships with our players is stronger. Their confidence in me, my confidence in them, I think has improved. Feeling just kind of more at ease, more confident in preparation and kind of know what to expect. I think having a year as an analyst here beforehand, I kind of knew I was making a lot of notes and keeping track of the schedules and those things. So every year is different, and you've got to earn it every year. Number one, number two, your schedule's different, your offense is different. So some of those things change, but. And then I think for me personally, I think one of my big challenges this year is going to be playing more guys early on and forcing that issue. I think guys have to earn it in practice, but we've got guys, of the 4 guys that started every game, you also got a Mitchell Mays who started 4 or 5 games through the end of the year. So we have a lot of guys who played a lot of football, and I think we need to reward them early on, get them on the field, build that continuity. Because I think one thing down the stretch is those guys had almost 1,000 snaps on them, and I think that caught up to us a little bit. And so that also, for me, kind of factors into how we train in the weight room, but then also how we rep and practice and those kinds of things.
Let's talk about continuity. You have so many guys on that O-line that are from South Carolina. What's been your impression of maybe how they differ a little bit being from the state?
Well, certainly, I think they understand the rivalry with South Carolina. They want to represent their state well, and so I think that matters to those guys. When you get guys from out of state that maybe don't understand that rivalry, that's something you got to teach. And then a lot of those guys grew up watching Clemson, But even like a Walker Parks, who's from Kentucky, he grew up watching Clemson. So. For me as a coach, it gives me a sense of pride, and when I watch our guys work out and train, it's a reminder to me that I need to do everything I can in my power to empty the tank for them, give them the best opportunity to be successful.
You talked about guys having some empty snaps they played last year. How do you feel about your depth this year?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, good question. I think we will. Certainly think we will. A guy like Tristan having another year under his belt, Colin Sadler another year under his belt, Trent Howard. Guys like Ryan Linthicum, who've had a great spring, best summer. Marcus Tate gives you flexibility. So, I know it's probably talked about every year that, hey, this year we have more depth than we've ever had. But I do feel like this year we have more depth. Now, it's hard it's hard to rotate centers in game, right? And so Ryan understands that. And there's situations where offensive line is different than any other position. Is it's the only position in sports that exists to protect somebody. So if a receiver goes in there and he runs the wrong route, he's not going to get the ball. If an offensive lineman goes in there and does the wrong thing, he get the quarterback hurt. And so there is a sense of urgency there that, one of my challenges to guys, because, Mitchell Mays went in there and did some really good things for us. And I told Mitch, you got to be consistent in practice. It's hard to show up every single day with the right mindset and practice and work and grind, not knowing if you're going to play on Saturday. So, long way to answer your question. I think this year we'll have more depth than we've had in the year past, more competitive depth, more guys that have played a little bit, and so my job is to try to get those guys on the field and create some depth. And then the other part of that is the last 2 years we have been in 18 we were blowing everybody out, and so you had a chance to put guys in the game, and when you're up by 3 touchdowns, you have a little bit more wiggle room. And so the last 2 years we haven't had that opportunity as much. So I think that kind of goes hand in hand. And then we just got to force the issue, I think, early on. But they've got to show it in practice.
It seemed like early last season when that opportunity might have been there, there were games that were sort of in hand, but then not,
right.
kind of dicey.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there trying.
Yeah, Georgia Tech was a close game, and then we took advantage. We got ahead, and then we put that second team group in, and they went all the way down the field and scored. That was good to see. And then Furman, we got it by 2 or 3 touchdowns. We put that second group in with Cade, and they didn't score. Then Furman scored, they didn't score, and so you had to put the first team back in. So they've got to perform when they go in there. They've got to perform, and so I think that's certainly part of it. Yeah, we tried to early on, and historically we've played more players than anyone in the country. And it's a big point of emphasis for Coach Sweeney, because only 11 guys can start, and those guys have earned the right to start, but a lot of guys have earned the right to play, and so we got to make sure we get those guys on the field.
Give us an update on Dietrich and sort of his...
Yeah. Dietrich's had a really good fall, summer. I saw him this morning. He's trimmed down. Those guys are all finishing their DEXA scans today, so I'll know numbers for that. But he's as lean as he's ever been. And he's, biggest thing for D, man, he had a 3.63 academically this spring, which is the biggest jump I've seen in a young man. So academically, he is taking care of business, and that's going to show up on the field, I believe. So he's had a good summer, and expected big things from him this fall.
Ballpark guess on his weight?
Yeah, he's about 340. Yeah. I think he was He told me this morning he was 336. So, with big guys that can fluctuate depending on time of day. But, for a guy that's been in the 360s, and he's still, he's like a 26% DEXA scan, which is really impressive. So he's very lean. That's not everyone's. If I was 336, it wouldn't look good, but he does. So, yeah.
You talk about. Sorry, so you talk about finding the best 5. You said that last year, and that Blake's emergence happened with that. I guess.
Yeah.
When you say finding the best 5, what are you trying to check the boxes of? What makes somebody one of the best 5? If there's maybe a decision.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the center has to make the points, the IDs, to get the ball to the quarterback. Make sure everyone's on the same page. That's first and foremost. Tackles they're going to be on an island more from a pass protection standpoint, and so they've got to be guys that you trust. When it's a 2-minute drill or it's an end-of-game situation, you got to drive 80 yards to win the game. Can that guy win one-on-one against some of the best pass rushers in the country in our league? And then guards got to do both, and so every guy's got a different skill set. Some guys a little bit further along in the run blocking than they are pass protection, and then I think our big point of emphasis is just effort, toughness, technique, finish. Like this camp's going to be a big point of emphasis of finishing blocks. You got to learn to, some guys naturally finish blocks, other guys have to work on that a little bit, and so. Effort can overcome a lot of deficiencies. So that's been a point of emphasis last year. And you watch the tape of some of those guys like Putnam and Parks and Blake. Those guys, they gourd people, and so that's the expectation for anyone who steps on the field.
talked about this in the spring a little bit with Tristan in terms of being a 5-star guy, having the self-awareness that's going to take a while to develop. I guess to give fans, the layman, a sense, like how abnormal is the Marcus Tate, the Blake Miller that plays as a true freshman?
Sure.
What is a normal development path look like?
Sure, yeah. Well, everyone's different, right? I mean, even Mitch Hyatt played as a freshman. He was 285 pounds, and he was a great pass blocker, but struggled a little bit at the point of attack in the run game. So it's not normal to have a Blake Miller who comes in physically ready. It's not normal to have a Marcus Tate, and so it's not unusual for a guy to take 2 or 3 years to get on the field. And so I think that's one thing. That's one of the reasons I think we've had the retention that we've had is we're able to cast a vision for guys and communicate with them. Here's where you are. Here's where you need to go. Here's what you need to do to improve. And so a guy like Tristan came in, and Colin bought in this offseason to where they were, what they need to do to improve. So, yeah, you could be more impressed with just Tristan's transformation coming out of COVID. He was a guy that was really affected by that. Colin is a guy that had a great strength program, great base, and has continued to build on that. So every guy is different. There's a physical aspect of being able to play early, and then there's the mental aspect of being able to play early, and then there's the maturity that it takes to weather just the grind of a freshman year in college, where you get here in January, you have some breaks in the summer, and then you go August until the end of January. That's a long season, and so you hear guys hitting that freshman wall, and so it also takes the maturity to kind of learn how to navigate that.
You've got more.
Do you think that, recruiting services in terms of the 5-star with Tristan, does that add pressure sometimes for these guys?
Oh yeah, sure.
And how do you get
Yeah,
around
well, no disrespect to you guys, but I don't pay attention to recruiting rankings for that reason. And especially on the offensive line, some of those rankings come if there's a kid that's playing as a freshman or sophomore for a good program, he's going to get a high ranking. And so some of that stuff is warranted, but certainly social media is something that I didn't have to deal with in recruiting. And so I think you see that with 4- and 5-star guys who are heavily recruited is the expectation, hey, you're going to go play early, play right now. Or there's a guy that maybe they were comparable to and he goes to a different school and their situation's different and he plays early and this guy doesn't. And so not everyone has the maturity to handle that. That's why guys are in the portal at a very high rate. So for guys like Colin and Tristan to say, hey, I've got to improve in these areas, I'm committed to Clemson, I think that speaks to who they are as young man, their character, and all that.
How close is Harris to being on that spectrum of playing?
No, yeah, Harris. That was the silver lining of Marcus and Walker being out this spring, and then Mitchell getting banged up a little bit. So he got a lot of reps, and he was repping with the first team. Against some really good players. So really excited about where Harris is. He's had a really good summer. I told him kind of coming out of spring, your goal is to make it hard for us to keep you off the field. So if we feel like Harris can help us, he's going to play. But like Colin last year, if I don't want to burn his year for 50 or 100 snaps, that's what we've got to kind of figure out.
Colin, where did you want to push him this offseason?
I think big picture ownership of the offense. I think that's kind of taking some of the drills to the field, and kind of understanding big picture stuff, and then also, he's a guy you got to kind of say, whoa, controlled aggression. He's like Walker; he can kind of just go red and just try to kill people, but you gotta contain that a little bit, which is you'd rather have that problem, right? Yep.
Last question, gentlemen.
How did that dinner turn out last night in Big Green Egg? How'd that go down?
Yeah, I did Mediterranean Greek chicken dish. It was excellent. Yeah, 5 stars.
Smoked chicken. How long did you smoke it?
It was only about 15 minutes.
Smoke?
Very short. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you, TA.
Very fresh. Yeah, thanks.